So this is number 3 again.
Oh,
Whoa.
It's a tight squeeze over here. And this is Led Zeppelin.
What is and what should never be.
Did you get it right?
I got it right.
Okay, good. I'm glad I finally got the pin drop correct. That was
You're
spot
working on it. Do you
we're
know?
finally getting this system down a little bit.
Do you know why Led Zeppelin is named Led Zeppelin?
Yeah,
why they
it's about
chose?
the lead balloon.
Yeah.
The Led Zeppelin.
A music producer said that they would sink like a Led Zeppelin, like a lead
like
balloon.
A lead balloon. Sadly, my dad does not like Led Zeppelin.
Well,
He
he's a
likes
Metallica
their-
fan.
Yeah, my dad's a huge Metallica fan. But it's funny when you ask him, he likes every song. You can go through a list and be like, okay, it's a good song. It's a good song. But he does not like Led Zeppelin.
Sometimes you don't like what a band stands for.
Maybe that's what it is. I think he just doesn't like Robert Plant's hair.
Well, some people just don't like Robert Plant.
I think that's really what it is. My dad just has something against him that, I don't know. We'll have to ask him about it.
I would say Robert Plant is probably one of the more sexual figures in rock and roll.
Definitely. Please don't make me play the Lemon song.
No,
as our next song.
I wasn't going to ask you to play the Lemon song. And we're definitely not closing this podcast with the Lemon song.
No, that's definitely one of my least favorite songs ever. And I don't like rap music, and I feel like that song's almost more graphic than some rap songs.
It's not more graphic, it's just more blunt.
Yeah, it just insinuates a whole lot more, and I don't like it. I think that's what it is. I don't know.
I don't think blunt is the right word there,
No,
but
it's not. It's
but
something.
I don't know. It just doesn't
It's just
doesn't
dirty.
sit well. It's a dirty song.
Just a dirty, dirty song. But let me ask you this, John. I'm Taylor. We're a couple of nothings, and how was your day?
It was okay. Worked longer than I usually do, but some days are like that. I took Maria out for a run. Didn't almost get run over today.
Oh, good. We don't have to tell everybody that story again about you getting run over with a moped.
I don't think we saved that episode, but
I
we'll
don't
save
think
it
we
for
will,
later.
But I don't think anybody
We'll save
wants
it
to
for
hear that
later.
story again.
Well, I'm glad you have confidence in my storytelling skills.
Hey, after the third time I heard about the moped, after we passed it and everything, I kind of got the story that the guy almost killed you with a moped. Maria did not seem fazed by it.
She wasn't. I was proud of that. I was proud of that, though. I was proud she didn't jolt or scare easily.
I can't believe she did not run out of the way of a moped.
She ran to the guy to lick him after he laid the bike
That's
down.
the most Maria thing ever. She is the least ferocious, least watchdog ever. She just runs up and licks you and knocks you over with her butt. That's all she does. And she literally did not let me leave your hallway the other day because she was coming at me butt first, just tail wagging until I scratched her butt. And then all she did when I scratched her butt was she got her leg all scratching up, and then she just stood there, and I was like, I can't go anywhere, Maria. So I had to stand there for about 5 minutes scratching her butt till she moved. Till she finally sat down and I could step over her.
You do it. I mean, you
I know.
you keep giving it to her. She's going to keep coming back.
Butt. She's got an itchy butt. There's something wrong with her butt. I gotta help a sister out.
Nah.
That's all it is.
Have you ever heard that if you stop scratching your back doesn't itch?
Yeah, I know, but she's a dog. I don't think it works like that.
It might.
Maybe.
Different rules for dogs.
So you asked me a really interesting question about animals the other day on our way to Atlanta.
I was wondering if you
your answer
I was
to it?
wondering if you remembered that
I
question.
did. So can you ask me what the question was again, though?
So the question, in essence, was, do all animals who have language tell stories? And I was thinking about different categories of animals and whether or not you could say definitely if they tell stories or not.
Okay, let me ask you this. What kind of animals do you think have language?
I'm probably going to break a lot of people's definitions of language, but for the purposes of this discussion, language to me is any form of audible sound that is used to convey a concept.
So here's what I came to believe is no. Animals don't tell stories because animals' language isn't extensive enough to communicate in that form. And that takes a certain kind of like cognitive memory. But animals do associate things and they do retain information in a story form. So, for instance, take like mice in a lab, they study that they can get a piece of cheese, but you know, it's like maybe on like a little shock pad.
Right.
Or something, and so they won't go to the cheese because they now associate the cheese with a shock. But
is it Pavlov's dogs? Pavlov's law of association, or
I
don't think it's a law of association.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
But it's Pavlov's.
I think it is a law of association.
It may be law of association, but
so, but then I was thinking about it. Like, I do feel like some animals do warn other animals, though. Like. Mm-hmm. Don't do that. Like that. You saw him die. Like you should know that. Like or you saw him. That's something. And so I don't know. I'm
not sure. I'm not sure that animals warn one another. I am sure that they express danger. So I was thinking of birds. Birds, when they're chirping, they're either trying to mate, which is trying to attract another bird. They're defending their territory and making it known that this is theirs. No other bird should come contest it. Or I'm not so sure about.
There are calls that there's a predator in the area.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. They make that audible.
Mm-hmm.
And you could say that's their attempt to warn other birds.
Right, but I don't know if that's a story. I think that's just a warning. I think that gets a different classification than a story.
I think that sound that birds make when there's a predator or a danger is the same reaction as the other sounds that I mentioned. So the mating or the territorial claims. I don't think it's an attempt to assist another member, another bird, another...
Ooh, see, I think it is a lot of times.
Really?
Yeah. You want to know? Oh, go ahead and ask me.
Is it a conscious attempt or is it just an attempt that's a result of them making a sound when they see a danger?
I don't know. You gotta ask the bird.
right. That's what I kept coming to when I was thinking about that on the way to Atlanta.
I don't know. I think a lot of animals do that because it depends on the animal. Because they could just be calling back to their family. You have to think about it that way, or just their mate or their children. And you
see that with chicks and...
Right. It could be something like that. It could be a communal animal where they are living in a tribe or a herd or something like that where they do want to warn other people. So I don't know, but I really do think you'd have to ask the bird.
Yeah.
But
and another thing that I think about is, white-tailed deer, because I grew up hunting white-tailed deer, and a doe, female deer will bust you. I mean, if she smells you, I'm just saying she'll bust your hunt. She'll ruin your hunt.
Oh.
Because if she smells you, she blows. She does what's called blowing.
Yeah.
And
she warns everybody that there's somebody
in effect, it warns the other animals. I'm not sure that she's doing it to warn the other animals unless she has offspring. I think it may be an attempt to warn offspring.
Right.
Not so sure about unrelated animals.
You just think it's their defense system.
Mm-hmm.
And other people maybe or other animals just recognize
because a lot of animals make sounds when they're in danger out of a defense mechanism. They're trying to intimidate what's putting them in danger.
Well, what I was going to say is I heard this crazy information the other day, and I wish I knew what kind of tree it is, but the trees that giraffes eat in Africa, the way that their root system is connected and through some sort of... I really wish I knew a little bit more of the details, but when a giraffe is eating that tree, it sends a signal to the other trees within a 200-foot or 200-meter radius, and those trees secrete
a toxin
mm-hmm. that giraffes don't like. And then the giraffes know, okay, I gotta go 200 feet away from that tree. And they go exactly to like the outer boundaries of that. But the plants are talking to each other. The trees are talking to each other. They are telling each other that there's a predator. That's so nuts. First of all, it's like Mother Nature's own, what do you call it? Like rationing system. Like, what do you call it? So something doesn't get, completely.
Right. That was my thought, was that they're in the desert, so there's a scarcity of water. So
it's a way of sustaining the plant. The plant has its own sustaining system so that you're not depleting one area, so there's no way to spread. It does it so that it's in pockets, so that there's still enough plants that they can regrow. It's really crazy.
Well, the distribution of water is probably so sporadic that it's better strategy to have more places that can absorb it than just one individual place.
That's true too, yeah.
And then it can be transported around the roots.
That is so crazy. The trees are talking to each other.
Life finds a way. I mean, the trees are alive. They really are. They make life here possible for us, and I don't think something without life could do that.
I really want to get one of those. Is it a synthesizer that where you can read the tree's electronic?
Oh, the frequency?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think
that's what it's called. But I really want to get one of those that you can hear the plants and what what their frequency is.
I have seen some of those articles where they'll have the exhibits where they have plants hooked up to, I guess it's a synthesizer.
I think you could just like buy them. I don't think that.
Yeah, you can.
Pretty cool. I really want to get one and see what the trees around here are talking about.
The most interesting. I don't think it tells you that much.
You don't think I can tell what the trees are talking about?
No.
Oh man.
What is interesting about that whole series of articles is that there are some claims that when a priest or a monk or a devout person or a pregnant woman sits nearby the plants, that their frequencies change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were listening to that, and they were talking about that. Yeah, that it changed depending on the male,
who was around, and
the bioacoustics.
Well, it only makes sense for a plant that's trying to survive to be somewhat aware of its surroundings, especially if it's stationary. Plants. I don't know of a plant that can move.
Well, I don't know if you want to talk about what you showed me.
Tumbleweed.
The other day.
Sorry.
Huh? I don't know if you want to talk about what you showed me the other day about the double slit experiment.
Ooh, how are we gonna get there from talking plants?
Well, how that transition played out in my head was talking about how that the plants can understand that something's around them.
Mm-hmm.
What you told me was that when they were testing electrons in the lab, that the results from where the electron was going to go changed, whether it knew something was watching it or not. That is crazy.
It's not whether it knew something was watching it; it's whether something was watching it. We can't say that.
Okay,
we can't say that
something was placed in. Yeah.
Right.
So this experiment essentially is running. They started by showing running waves through a slit, and how the waves, when it goes through, would normally, look like kind of how they would coming out of the ocean or something. They'd be, a semicircle. If you run that through two slits, the waves then intersect each other, they come off, and you get...
they make what's called an interference pattern.
Right, and so
where
you
have
multiple points of contact up against what they have is like a wall or a screen.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would think when you're shooting electrons that you would have this same pattern happen.
No, what they thought was that the electrons would form a pattern equivalent with shooting physical material.
Right,
so
right.
just one
slits.
straight...
Right. Yeah, so that they would land... Yeah, through the two slits. Instead,
Is that the first cuss word of the podcast?
I said schlitz. I don't even know what that word was. So they thought it was going to go just through the two slits. Instead, they ended up going in that wave pattern and the interference pattern. So there was multiple contacts up against the wall. But when they put something there to measure, it then changed its path to the two slit pattern that they originally thought it was going to be. And that is really bizarre.
It is.
That's so, mind-blowing. Everybody needs to watch this this little 5-minute clip, Dr. Quantum
Nah,
double slit
it's
experiment.
really cheesy.
It was really cheesy, but it did a good job of explaining it to me, and it blew my mind. And I really want some more explanation on this. And I really want to know why they were testing this in the first place. What does running electrons through it, or anything through a slit, have to do with anything? So I want to know how this experiment was even thought up.
It's the basis is to try to understand how light functions and what light is.
Light's not a wave. I've been reading into that lately. I don't know enough about that to get into it, but it has been really intriguing to me lately.
So what we know about light is that some aspects of light are absorbed and some are reflected, depending on the material that the light comes into contact with. And that's about it.
That's about as much as I know.
I think that's fascinating, especially when you start talking about how that opens up our exploration of the cosmos, because we can tell what elements something is made of by the frequency of light that is bounced off of it, is reflected off of it. That's huge. We would have no way to know what anything is until we go there if we didn't have light and we couldn't analyze light in that way. So that's incredible. The next thing that comes to mind is we know that light slows down. So in a vacuum, in space, light has a constant speed. When you put light in our atmosphere, when you put light through glass, when you put light through water, it slows down. It bends in some cases, in most cases. So that says that there's actually something that is propagating. And I guess the first point could tell you that as well, unless you thought of like the table and the physical things as emitting light, which I guess you could say is a form of reflection. But it's generally understood that light is reflected and it's actually something. And that's where the whole debate about whether it is a wave or a particle comes in. And a lot of people have, I'm not sure that they have copped out of the debate, but a lot of people say it's both.
That's what I feel like that's what I was taught in school, was that it was wave and particle. Because you have light particles and you have light waves.
We were just talking about how it functions as both. I mean, we've seen it function as both a wave and a particle. So it makes sense that it would be both, but it doesn't make sense that it would be both.
Doesn't. But I've learned that nothing makes sense, and we know nothing about our universe, how anything works. I mean, we know nothing, like absolutely nothing. I mean, we know what we know that like 80% of the universe is made of dark matter, but we don't know what that is.
Right.
Like,
I hate that term.
Like, how is that even? I mean, it's not even that. Just like, how is that concept possible? Like, how do you know that? That's just so baffling to me. Like, how do you know? Like, oh, we know there's something there. We just don't know what it is.
Well, and this is where a lot of people tie the dark matter conversation into the classical ether conversation, because classical physicists believed in a substance that underlied the whole universe, and they called it the ether. And now we have physicists talking about dark matter, and it's this substance that underlies the whole universe, but it's not ether. That's always tripped me up, and I'm not studied enough in physics to make the distinction. But it seems like we've sort of gone back to this idea of there's something underneath it all that we can't tell what it is yet. But we know that there's something. Something interesting to look into there is Planck's constant, because Planck's constant is the inherent radiation that is that's found in any place in the universe. And Taylor has gone to let Maria outside, because I'm sure that you all could hear her whining to be outdoors. And she didn't go outside after all.
She did not go outside. She's not entertained with us.
So,
sorry, what were we talking about?
Planck's constant is this amount of energy that is found even in a vacuum. And we don't know what it is, we just know that it's there. And it is a long number.
So it's the physical constant that is the quantum of action central in quantum mechanics. Huh. So what exactly is it? I'm sorry, I missed it.
It's the quanta of action. Don't you know what that means?
I don't know what any of this means, Wikipedia. Thank you very much.
My understanding is that it's simply what's there when nothing else is there. We haven't found a place where Planck's constant.
Okay, it links the amount of energy a photon carries with the frequency of its electromagnetic wave. Huh.
So then...
Anyways, it sounds like it's something that's really interesting to look into that I don't know that much about.
So,
and I don't think a lot of people know a lot about science when we really get into it, because things like those constants and things like that, I feel like down the road end up getting disproven or tweaked and things like that anyways, because if this is based off of something that we don't know, when we find out what it is, it's going to change.
Right,
You know what I mean?
and it's kind of crazy because there are so few and precise scientific laws, and then on top of those laws, we have just this fountainhead of theory and concepts and forward thinkers, and it's all great, but Maria hates it. It's all great, but it really convolutes science to the common person, I feel like. I had no interest in science for a long, long time, just because when I would have a question, I would look into something, and if I did any sort of digging at all, I was just overwhelmed. It was like drinking water out of a fire hydrant.
Yeah. No, I agree with you, and it's because we don't know anything, that there's so many theories out there that you can't just have one or two answers to something,
right.
Because everything's just because we don't know anything. And I mean, it's really, I'm still trying to read Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. It's really not meant for people in a hurry, if you ask me.
What kind of hurry are you people in?
Well, I guess I drive too much. I really should have gotten it in like an audiobook, but it's so chock full. But everything Neil deGrasse Tyson says at the end of the sentence is like, but that's what we don't know, or that's what we do know of the 0.5% that we know. And I'm like, what the, like, come on, you don't know any of this stuff,
right?
And some of it they do look back on very matter of factly, and it baffles me that we know nothing. And today I was even listening to a Science Friday episode talking about our ocean and talking about underwater drones and underwater earth underground surveying and stuff like that. And the statistic is like, if you go 3,000 meters below the ocean's surface, you have a 50% chance of finding a species that has never been discovered before.
Say that again.
If you go 3,000 meters or below, I think I got this statistic right. If you go 3,000 meters below the ocean surface, you have a 50% chance of finding a species that has never been discovered. Or never been categorized, classified.
Right. That is... Wow.
Because it's so much harder to photograph, and the medium of water is so much harder than a vacuum of space because of the pressure that as we were talking about, the way the light refracts it and reflects and things like that you can't get a clear picture.
Well, a lot of the ocean world has no light.
Well, but even if you produce
right.
light, then everything scurries. But yeah, you're right, most of it. But that's why, because the light doesn't reach that far, because it's distorted when it gets down that far, because it's not in a vacuum. So it's really, really crazy that we've discovered or explored more. I know people always use the statistic Mars. We've just explored more of Mars than we have of our ocean, but we have by like a huge
of Mars,
of a huge margin. Yeah.
I always thought that was. I always thought it was of the moon or of our solar system.
Maybe of the whole, but I know of Mars, like of the surface, we've technically explored more of like more of the surface of Mars than we have of like our oceans.
Bottom line is we got a lot of swimming to do.
A lot. And they were talking about underwater drones, and we need to get in that business. We have 2 businesses. No. These are two businesses that we've got to find some way to invest in. Three. I lied on. And these are ones that I have like really invested some interest into. The first one is the ocean water cleanup. That one I think is really, really needed. And it's really important, and it's really cool, and it's going on now, and that's something, I think it's literally just called the Ocean Water Cleanup Project.
I've seen a news story circulating today about it's a pilot whale who died, and they opened it up, and it had something like 15 pounds of plastic inside of it.
You know, that great... I wish I remember what they call it, the Great Plastic Island or whatever they call it. It's like in between Hawaii and California, or off the coast of Hawaii. It's like bigger than the state of Texas, like land mass wise. It's that big, and it's one of them. And with the Great Pacific, oh man, it's like the Great Pacific Plastic Patch. Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, this is... and it's extremely upsetting when you find out that people do not know about this, because you realize that this is bigger than the state of Texas floating in our ocean. It's a land mass of plastic that has been dragged together by water currents. It's huge. It's absolutely massive. And it, like I said, this is just the largest one. It's not the only one in our oceans. And it's really, really, really sad. And it's something that needs to be addressed. Before your roommate comes in and we have to pause the podcast, the other 2 companies we really need to get involved in are ocean drones. Obviously, surveying our oceans is really important. Surveying the bottom of the ocean, finding out what species are down there is really, really critical. We got to figure out, there's so much stuff going on with the way our water's changing, the temperature, and how much our environment's changing. It's really necessary. And the third one is space junk cleanup. The amount of space junk,
orbital junk,
is insane. And it's like actually preventing us from going into further space exploration. And so that is the third thing that we got to get involved in. But for now, let's take a quick break, and we're going to go to an imaginary commercial break. La, la, la.
We're definitely sponsored by you. You are the sponsor of this podcast. If you want to sponsor us, email us.